What's up, Spiceheads? Welcome back to another episode of On the Air, the show that's all about getting IT pros and tech vendors together to geek out over technology. As always, I'm your host, Justin. We got a really exciting special edition of the show today we're really excited to bring to you guys. It's going to be our first ever All Experts edition of On the Air. That's right. You guys may have seen our Expert Roundtable series that we do here on Spiceworks from time to time, and this is going to be our first chance to bring experts from around the world to one place to talk about getting you guys the advice that you guys need. So today's topic is going to be all about ransomware, and not only how to prepare yourself from ransomware, but how to build a comprehensive multi-layer ransomware preparedness solution. So for more on this, we're going to introduce today's panel. We've got experts from Arcserve, KnowBe4, and Sophos that are here to get you the information that you need. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start off with a round of introductions. Batting first, he is right back here again. From Arcserve, everyone please welcome back Mr. Stacy Budd. Stacy, welcome to the show.
Glad to be back.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Stacy, you were just here on for World Backup Day on March 30th. Did they let you go home in the meantime, or were you just like sleeping here in the studio?
Well, they let me go to other locations and then back here.
Okay. Well, we are excited to have you. Stacy, for those who didn't get to meet you last time, do you mind telling us a little about yourself and what you do for Arcserve?
Sure. So I'm a pre-sales consultant with Arcserve. What that entails is that everything from demoing product to potential customers to helping customers do what we call POCs, proof of concepts, to helping customers do some light install and configuration, to doing events like this. So.
All right, very cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Stacy.
Thank you.
All right, our next panelist coming to us from KnowBe4, Mr. Eric Krohn. Eric, welcome to the show.
Nice to be back.
Eric, yes, we're glad to have you back. You were actually with Stacy last time you were on the show, so, glad to see the bromance has continued to flourish.
Absolutely.
And that we could be here for part of it. Eric, for those who haven't met you before, can you tell us a little about yourself and what you do for KnowBe4?
Sure. I'm a security awareness advocate. What that really means is I get to travel around, I get to talk at different conferences, do webinars, things like that, and really kind of teach people how to make security awareness programs work well in their organization, kind of tips and tricks, and how to get the people involved in being part of your security culture.
And I've always wondered this. You guys at KnowBe4, force your own employees to take the training, or
Yes.
Yes, you do. So you guys do eat your own dog food.
Oh yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, we fish each other all the time, and they get pretty creative with us internally. Yeah.
All right. Well, very cool. We're excited to hear from you as well, Eric. And last but not least, from Sophos, everyone please welcome Mr. Dean Schroll. Dean, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Doing well, thank you.
Cool. Well, Dean, do you mind telling us a little about yourself and what you do for Sophos?
Absolutely. So I work with the pre-sales engineers in the central region with the channel partners and customers. We essentially work with all of our security products. Everything that we do is focused around security. Some of it being a little bit of educating on the products themselves or security, and just kind of helping out to get everything deployed properly.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Dean. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Yep.
All right. Well, of course, what would On the Air be with you guys, the viewers? So for more on that, we're going to kick things over to our guest chat desk correspondent today. Sitting in for Chelsea, everyone, please give a warm welcome to Erin. Erin, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Thank you, Justin. And what's up, Spiceheads? That's right. My name is Erin, and I will be your substitute chat desk host. It's great to be here, and I'm ready to get things rolling. So you have a different host, but the same rules apply. Per usual, you have questions and we have the answers. So get your questions in the Q&A, and if I ask your questions live on the air, you'll be in the running for some super cool swag and prizes. So I think you want to know what those swag and prizes are.
Heck
so let's
yes.
get those out of the way. All right, today we are giving away not one, not two, but three $25 Amazon gift cards. So get your questions in, get here. In addition, we have our grand prize going on. You don't want to miss this. This is a really good one, guys. The grand prize today is an Omen X 35-inch Ultra WQHD curved gaming monitor right here. Great prize. Get your questions in, get here, get listening. This is going to be an awesome day, an awesome show. So we're excited to have you. Also, a little later in the show, we're going to bring back a favorite game. We've had a lot of fun with this. We have the ransomware security draft going on. In addition, check out the thread in the community to keep up with everything that's going on. It's gonna be a great show. We're ready to get rolling. I'm gonna throw it back to Justin. Thank you for having me. This is fun. Hey.
All right, thanks everybody, and make sure to get those questions into Q&A. We'll be announcing the winners of those prizes at the end of the show. I will also apologize in advance for calling Aaron Chelsea at some point in the show, I am sure. So, all right, well guys, let's go ahead and get started. One of the most common questions that we get here about ransomware is, okay, well, what's the one magic bullet solution? I can't afford to have ransomware. I can, under no circumstances can I have it in my system. What is the magic panacea? Eric, we'll start off with you. What can you tell us about this magic bullet solution, and why is it security awareness training?
Well, there really is no magic bullet, quite frankly. I think we all know that going into this, right? It's really a matter of putting different layers together to reduce the risk, right? We see ransomware happening in all sorts of different forms and fashions and happening very quickly, which is why it's so hard to kind of stay ahead of these things, because the attackers are constantly changing how they're doing their attacks, right? With respect to our awareness training, quite frankly, it's a great way to reduce the risk significantly on the phishing side of things. But there's lots of different ways it's happening. We got the phishing, we got unsecure RDP facing the internet. All of those things are happening. So because of that, there's really just no one single solution that's ever going to end this thing.
Dean, what about you guys? You guys offer a lot of different products. You got firewalls, you've got endpoint protection, you've got server protection. You guys don't position yourself to be like the end-all be-all of protection against ransomware. What do you guys see as the reasoning for that?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that the client is consistently going to be that weakest point, whether it's the machine or the user. And that's where, if you can protect that machine itself, whether it's through, a lot of companies have gone down the machine learning path, like we have within our Intercept X, we have our deep learning. So if you can protect that client and keep the users from doing some of the things that they shouldn't be clicking on, because just to throw out some statistics, in Sophos Labs, we are seeing 400,000 new bits of malware every single day.
Really?
First time I heard that, I didn't think that number could be accurate, but it is. And to make it even worse, 75% of those we're seeing in individual organizations. So they're very motivated, and they're morphing it to be different everywhere. So, although there's still some value in the kind of the legacy AV with signatures, it's not sufficient enough to keep up with how much everything is morphing. So.
And Stacy, obviously, backup is the final catch-all, assuming everything else fails. But I guess my question to you would be like, why not just invest everything in backup, right? I mean, ultimately, if that's gonna save you from having to pay the ransom, couldn't you just get like the greatest possible backup imaginable and not have to worry about things like firewalls and security awareness training?
Because then you'd be constantly doing restores, right? So it's really about the restore side of it, right? Yeah. And some restores are going to take longer than others, but being able to, what we like to position as disaster recovery, bring up those systems, still continue to do business as usual while you're cleaning your network and cleaning those systems, and then fell back, those systems once you're done. There is no magic bullet, right? Attacks are going to come from inside, from outside. They're going to morph. They're going to change. That's changing constantly. So it's going to happen, but you need to have the frequency of backup so that when you do need to restore, you're restoring from as close of a point as time. So a tight RPO schedule as you can, as your data can kind of can afford.
Cool. So. Now, one of the other things I want to ask y'all, because it's literally all three of you guys' jobs to make sure you're staying ahead of what's going on in the ransomware community. I mean, now that we've kind of established that you do need a very, multi-layered, if not complex, protection against ransomware, I feel like a lot of IT pros can feel added pressure then to be able to kind of adjust that and maintain flexibility in order to meet the threats that are out there. What are you guys seeing, out there that, or what are some resources that you guys can recommend that you guys at Sophos utilize? Because while it's great to just kind of have a Google News alert for ransomware, you also don't want to be the person in the headline that is triggering that Google News alert. So if there's stuff out there that maybe isn't a thing yet, but we all need to start preparing for it, what are some of the best ways to start incorporating that into your strategy, Dean?
So I think a lot of it just comes down to the individual IT organization kind of doing their due diligence. I mean, there's a lot of times, like if we look back at Petya that happened, the vulnerability that was taken advantage of had been around. There'd been a patch for that for quite some time. So we talk about like backups and patching, and that seems pretty rudimentary when we're talking about an IT organization. But when you get stuck in the day-to-day operations, a lot of times those things will fall back. So I think making sure that you're keeping up, at least protecting what you can against with those patches, and then again taking that layered approach, and making sure that you're going through those products and ensuring that things are turned on properly, that you've got the maximum coverage, and auditing that. I think it's a really good practice to go and audit your all of your settings, all your firewalls, all your firewall policies as well.
And Eric, how about you guys? I mean, you guys have to be able to adapt your training to things that you're seeing out there. What's kind of your process, and how do you guys as an organization, look for threats that are on the horizon?
Right. So, I mean, one of the things we do, we do have some researchers that keep an eye on the dark web, looking at things that are going out in marketplaces and proof of concept stuff, keeping an eye on that. We also have a fantastic user community that a lot of times shares information through the Phish Alert button, for example, the little button that we have where you can report phishing emails internally. They can share that information with us too, so we can see some of these attacks that are going on in the real world, what's happening right now. And a lot of times we'll take those, we'll what we call defang them. We'll take the malicious links out and turn them back into templates so people can get them right out there. So we have a lot of things that come from our user community that help with that, along with researchers as well. Personally, I spend a lot of time following some of the well-known researchers on Twitter and some of those groups like that. There's some fantastic resources out there as well. But unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to do that, and that's not always something that a lot of organizations can spare, to have your people chasing that down all the time. So, it becomes kind of a cat and mouse game. But one of the things that Dean kind of alluded to here too is most of the time these attacks aren't necessarily a 0 day. So you don't have to be up to the minute sort of things. These are exploits that are out there for a little while that are being leveraged against these organizations. So don't feel like you have to have all of the latest information right now, right here, unless you're really in that security researcher field or somebody that has some very, very high valuable information. Most of the time, it's going to be something that's been out there for a little bit of time.
Yeah, it's actually, I just was reading that Boeing got hit by WannaCry, even though it was in the news all over the place last year, and it was like a simple patch that all they needed to do was install it, and yet they still, so I guess, that's great advice, that it is most of the time going to be something that is known, that you just have to cover your foundations. Stacy, for you guys, I mean, obviously for Arcserve, backup is meant to prepare for any sort of disaster, whether it's ransomware or cable fiber being torn out of the ground and stuff like that. So, hurricanes, exactly. So how much do you guys look at ransomware and prepare your solutions accordingly, or do you just kind of try to encompass it just for all disasters that may come to be, whether it's ransomware or otherwise?
It's a major focal point because, that leads to frequency of backup, right? Because it's so prevalent in the market now, unfortunately. So, having a solution that you can restore from 15 minutes ago, or maybe even restore up in the cloud, right, and get those systems up and running. Our customers are definitely looking for solutions like that. And I'd like to add that every so often you should take a look at all your solutions that you have in place, and either are these meeting the changes that's out there. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to shift to another company, but you have talks with the company that you're working with. What can we do to better our protection? Here's what we're doing. Plus, you have to understand the type of data that you have and talk to the stakeholders of that data, right? And understand, what is the risk if we lose this, right? And certain industries like healthcare and finance and legal, right, have bigger risk if they lose their data than others. But for any, it could definitely, unfortunately, be the end to a company if they were to lose all their data.
That's true, yeah. I mean,
something to add there is that you're not guaranteed that you're going to get your data back if you do pay the ransom. It is big business, and that's why we're seeing it being so prevalent right now, is because there's a lot of money that is able to be made. You've got people that are standing up ransomware as a service, so anyone can go and subscribe to these services and basically take their money and invest back into it. But they're using enterprise-grade encryption on the data that they're encrypting. So without having that backup, you're really putting yourself in a bad spot that you're not going to get it back, because I think if I recall, 50% of the people are paying the ransom, and about 30% of those are not getting their data back.
30% of if you pay the ransom,
50% of the or 30% of the 50%
yeah.
paying it.
Okay,
yeah.
so there's still a 30% chance.
We're still
even
dealing
if
with
you
bad
pay.
guys.
Yeah.
Well, there's some other things too, and I think it's interesting. You were talking about like recovery point objective and RTO. You look at issues like what was it, Hancock Health, I think it was. They ended up paying around $55,000 in a ransom, not because they didn't have backups, but because it was easier and faster for them to pay the backup or to pay the ransom than to restore the file. So you really need to take that sort of thing into account as well. We want to avoid paying the ransom at all costs, but making sure that what you have is not only able to get the information back, but in a timely manner. That's also really important. It just made me think about that.
And that's when you have those conversations with the stakeholders. Because a lot of times, if you go to the actual stakeholders, right, in the company, the people that are going to be affected, and say, you know what, we're going to be able to pull your data back. What's the max level that we can pull it back from? And they may tell you, hey, we need continuous protection. We may need 15 minutes is fine, or an hour is fine, or a day is fine. All too often, I speak to backup administrators, and their approach is, yeah, daily is fine. Well, have you spoken to the actual, stakeholders of that? Is it fine for everybody in the company or every set of data, right? And then, like you said, how long you're going to take to recover that? That's another side to it. Do you need to have the disaster recovery portion of that as well?
Now, I want to talk about the actual individual components of a multi-layered ransomware protection solution. So, Dean, we'll start out with you and kind of the space that you guys work in at Sophos. I work with a lot of different marketers, and a lot of marketers work in Spiceworks, and a lot of the stuff they're talking about sounds pretty awesome in like a Star Trek kind of way, like talking about AI-enabled SIM and different security components that can coordinate in real time in order to neutralize a threat instantaneously. And all this sounds really cool, but what can you tell us about what actual folks in the real world, particularly in the SMB space, like 100 to 500, are doing? Are they looking at things like threat intelligence and AI, or is this just kind of something cool for a marketer to talk about?
Yeah, within our group, we talk about this frequently, that machine learning sounds like it's kind of like the cloud, right? Really, the cloud's just data center. Some marketer turned it into the cloud. So machine learning is just it feels like another marketing term. But when you get down and you kind of think about it, we're using AI every day on our phones, whether it's facial recognition or Siri or whatever it may be. There's so many different things in our lives that they're using the AI, and that's what the endpoint is essentially leveraging to not just say, I've got this signature and it matches this, I'm going to block this, but look at it at a lot lower level and learn what is that actually doing. Is it going and writing to a lot of files? Is it maybe a lot of times they're doing like code caving, to where it's a valid application and they're finding some white space and dropping it within that valid application. So we still even have to watch the apps that you're trusting. So maybe even whitelisting applications isn't enough. So really, I think a lot of it comes down to that endpoint itself and protecting that, because in a lot of cases it's grayed so much of where's our perimeter. No more are you just able to kind of put a firewall in it at your provider, and that's going to protect everything, because now you've got so many VPNs going out to other locations, or you've got so many things out in the cloud with third parties, and everyone has mobile devices or working from home. So that's there's just a lot of things, and I think what is most consistent comes down to protecting the clients, and whether that happens to be a laptop or a mobile device.
Well, I think that's interesting, because we talk a lot about obviously server protection versus endpoint protection. Do you feel is it reasonable to assume that more valuable data will be at the server, or is it a bigger risk at the endpoint just because it's less control, it's out in the open? And
I think it depends a lot on the environment and what the clients are doing. But I would say at the server environment side, that's generally going to be a lot more of what's business impacting. But that server environment also should be treated a lot different, more to me like a DMZ, where it's only has the access that's coming in that's required. So you're able to segment that out a lot easier than you are your clients. So say a client does get hit, it can't move laterally up to your servers, and hopefully you can do some stonewalling with whatever product you have to even protect from clients as well.
Okay. Eric, let's talk to you next. I mean, security awareness training we all know is really important. And obviously, in an ideal world, all of our users would be trained and they'd be a huge army of anti-ransomware soldiers. But, given that we're going to expect some folks to kind of fade in and out and, not pay the most attention, are there people that within business units or individual roles that absolutely need to have the best training, or that you need to pay special attention to, whether it's the CEO or the front desk lady, for example, or man? Who are some of the people that actually absolutely need to have the security training hammered into them the most?
Honestly, I think everybody needs that.
Sure.
Okay, I really do. And the way that I kind of talk about this a lot is everybody needs the basic training. Everyone needs to understand phishing attacks. Everyone needs to understand that these things are out there. But you're going to have people that are going to be more prone to specialized sorts of attacks, right? Your HR department, your payroll department, anyone that handles money or handles sensitive information, right? HR and payroll going to be very susceptible to, say, tax fraud, W-2 fraud sort of attacks. So you want to give them a little bit more. You want to make sure that they understand those attacks a little bit more. And your CEOs, your leadership needs to know that their name's out on the website, their name's out on the press releases, their name's out in all these places.
More exposure
that makes them a target right there, right? They're the ones that are out there. It's a lot easier to find the CEO than it is, the receptionist sometimes, as far as creating the attack and doing the pretexting and all that. But when it really boils down to is everybody has to have that culture. And I really think that giving everybody the same basic training across the organization helps that culture resonate throughout there, because everyone's heard the same things, they understand the same things, and it kind of bounces off each other in the break room. And when somebody goes, oh yeah, I got an email that was kind of like that, and everybody understands why that's a problem. But yeah, there are definitely people that you're going to want to then do the micro modules. We call them micro modules, where we are 5-10 minute sort of things that are very specific to the kind of attacks that they can plan on receiving. Other than that, yeah.
And there's, to piggy on that, there's a lot of things that are happening, not ransomware specific, but my wife works in real estate, and a lot of times, someone clicks on, say, an email that's coming in and something executes on their machine. It sits there silently, just watching what's going on. It can see all the emails going back and forth, so they time it to know when the transfer is supposed to happen. And there was just a deal that occurred where the clients lost $150K because they sent the email and said, hey, change of plans, wire the money over here. So, obviously there's a lot of different motivation to sit on these machines and just sit there quietly and patiently.
I think what's important too is the training is super important. Also, as part of that training, make sure everybody understands what's at risk, right? Because if we go in blindly, we, the public, the users, go in blindly and just take some training, you're going to be a lot more receptive to it if you understand, hey, this business could go out, we could go out of business, right? Or, it could affect our end users, and this is what's at risk truly with that.
Well, to add to that a little bit too, is it's important that users understand too that their personal data is impacted by this. Ransomware doesn't just hit businesses. It doesn't end the line there at businesses. Their home data, the pictures of their kids, the pictures of the things that they care about, their documents, their tax stuff, all of that's at risk too. And you need to make sure that when you're talking to folks about this, they understand that, because they're going to be much more interested in the training from that point.
And we've also seen that some of the ransomware will sit there and it's been morphing. We thought ransomware was just kind of going to hit and it maybe was a fad and it would fall out. But in a couple different ways, what we've seen is kind of like a leakware, to where it's sitting there. Now it has access to everything. So maybe there's some compromising pictures. So now it could, depending on who it is, now they could do a little, get a little creative on blackmailing there as well.
For sure.
So,
all right. One last question for Stacey before our next segment. So we all know, we talked about last time that you were on, that the two most important parts of backup are testing it and then also having a plan. Well, I guess having a plan and then testing it. What can you tell us about creating a backup plan and testing it specifically for ransomware, are those different than, again, a general hurricane disaster recovery plan and test, or are there things specific to ransomware that we should be incorporating?
Well, I think that should be part of the plan, right? So it's something that should be taken into consideration with that. And then frequency of testing is also important. Automated testing to help people do that as well. But I don't think that there's any testing that's specific to ransomware. It's just when you're building that plan, it definitely should be a consideration within there. Absolutely.
And then for testing your users at the same time, how do you make sure? I mean, you can force everyone to go through the training, but then when you're not lurking over them, how do you make sure? Is it just doing the phishing test like you guys provide, or are there other ways to kind of get them where they might not be expecting?
What I like to do, actually, through our platform, it's really easy to do like a scam of the week, where you set it up kind of like a phishing campaign, but what it does is it sends kind of the latest, greatest what's going on out there to people once a week in their email box. That happens automatically, and that's a really nice way to keep it up on them. The phishing emails, though, and that is such an important piece of keeping them caring and paying attention when those come through. So I recommend on those, at least once a month, you phish your users more often if you can, but at least once a month. We find that if you go less than once a month, they start losing it. Yeah, the return really drops off pretty significantly. So that seems to be where the sweet spot is.
And Dean, how about for you guys? Is there a good way to test endpoint protection besides introducing a live virus into your environment?
It's hard. I mean, you can go out and there's a lot of different sites that you can use to run tests on it. But we have utilities that we have that we'll show in a demo. It's like, okay, we'll run this utility and it's going to block this, and to me it's a little. How genuine is that to say, hey, we've got this tool called Sophos Tester Tool, and we're going to block this?
Yes.
So I mean, it's really hard to do some real live testing. You can go and put test tools against it, but I mean, it really comes down to just I'll go back to just making sure that you have everything configured properly, and you really are just kind of combing through your whole environment.
Okay, cool. Well, guys, it is now time to shift gears to our next segment. We haven't done this one in a while. It's one of our favorites. Do you guys play fantasy baseball, fantasy football?
Yeah. Fantasy football.
Fantasy football. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, we're going to be doing something exactly like that, except it's fantasy ransomware preparedness draft.
Sounds exciting.
This will end well.
Yeah. That was very cool. Very well done. So the rules of this are pretty simple. Aaron is going to be assisting us, but basically we have 15 different security elements, and actually if Christian could put those 15 onto our monitor right here, I'll go ahead and read them out for the crowd, but if someone can pass those to Christian, it would be great. So our first one is multi-factor authentication. The next one is SIEM, S-I-E-M. The next one is phishing reporting button, which is kind of like what Eric had mentioned, as far as something that goes into your user's email, and if they see a suspicious email, they can report it. Next one is password standards, with the assumption that if you take this, that you have password standards and your other two opponents will not. The next is a second chance tool, which, Eric, do you want to give us a 30-second intro to what the second chance tool is?
Sure. Yeah, the second chance tool is a tool that we have that essentially what happens is when somebody gets an email, or they get an email with a link in it and they click on it, what it does is it pops it up in front of them and says basically, are you sure you want to go here? And it lays out where the link goes. It's just a second chance for them to make the right decision, if you will. That's basically the gist of it there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and just as obviously as part of the game, we've got solutions from backup, security awareness training, or KnowBe4 in specific, and then things that Sophos does. I did want to put a caveat out there, because you might be asking, well, why don't we have security awareness training as one of the things that we'll be drafting? And the reason for that is because when he initially did this game for the first time, Brian Wing, who is our IT pro, took security awareness training and basically used it as a trump card, because any of the scenarios that we talked through, he was just like, well, my users were trained not to do that, so we wouldn't need to do that anymore. So that is the reason why we're not doing it. Okay, keep on going. Next gen firewall, endpoint protection, endpoint antivirus, server protection, server antivirus, web gateway, email gateway, mobile antivirus, mobile protection, threat intelligence, and then 3 of the different backup solutions. You can take one, you can take none, you can take all 3. Disaster recovery as a service, cloud backup, and on-premises backup appliance. All right, so I think we will go just kind of in order to make things easy. So Stacy, your first pick is up. Which one are you going to take? Are you going to be like one of those guys who's like huge Patriots fan, so he takes all Patriots? You can just take all three?
I'm not going to take all those, but you definitely have to go with your Tom Brady there, which would be D-Raz in my mind.
All right, so. D-Raz is the Tom Brady, according to
I think people would argue that, but, some people. But.
Eric, are you going to do another homer pick? Or?
You know what I'm going to do here, because obviously...
Steve's going to get mad at you if you don't take one of your own
picks. No, but you know what? Because we don't have security awareness training in there for obvious reasons, I'm going to go ahead and start with the email gateway, though.
Okay.
Try to keep the emails out of the people's hands in the first place.
All right. Sounds good. So email gateway to Stacy. Dean, you are up next.
Yeah, I'm going to be a homer here. I got to go with the endpoint. I mean, it's...
The endpoint?
Yeah, just stating the obvious and kind of everything that I've talked about, that, I think it's very important to keep that endpoint protected.
Okay, cool. And then we'll do this snake style. So Dean, you'll get the next pick, and we'll go back the other way.
I was going to go with email gateway, but that was snagged. So with our threat intelligence here, that's just more of the intelligence on the back end is what we're going for here.
Yeah.
Not really a protection, more of just... I'm going to go with threat intelligence.
Okay.
Really just because I think that's the secret sauce to any of these, honestly, or a lot of these anyway. If you're looking at next-gen firewall, server, web gateway, mobile AV, a lot of those I think are going to just be based off of what you know.
Okay. All right, Eric.
All right. Well, because we always say that the first step is training the users, the second one is having a good backup. I'm going to go with cloud backup, because that also runs with the kind of the 3-2-1, one of them off-site sort of things.
And so you're picking cloud over the on-premises because it's
off-site.
Got it. Okay. All right. Stacy, next to you.
I like the whole "Are you sure" thing. So I'm going to go with the second chance tool.
All right.
Second chance tool.
Okay.
Do you really did you really mean to click that link?
And actually, I have a question about the second chance tool. Does it pop it up for every single link in email, or is it only suspicious ones?
No, it's pretty much if they click on a link in an email and it's going out there, it's going to pop it up.
Okay. All right. Cool. And then Stacy, we will take you again. You're coming back around the bend.
Okay. Because so frequently, although cloud backup is great, okay, sometimes restoring from the cloud the amount of data sometimes. So also having that on-prem backup appliance can sometimes be.
Okay.
It can also be a DRaaS appliance, by the way, right? So a lot of times that can be your first level of disaster recovery as well.
So what's interesting about this is that Dean does not have a backup solution.
Yeah.
That's how much faith I have.
I'm okay with that. How about you?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
All right, good deal.
All right, yeah.
Well, maybe that was a strategic play.
Yeah. The run, like when someone takes all the running backs and you have to start. Lord knows who. All right, Eric.
For me, it's going to be that phishing reporting button, because that's very useful in a lot of ways. You can use it as a kind of an eye-opening reporting tool. Hey, there's something, we're under attack. You can leverage that in a lot of different ways. So
Okay.
go with that one.
All right, we're going to go Dean next, and then one last round. So
Multi-factor auth.
MFA.
Yeah,
I feel like that lasted pretty long. I don't know. That and SIEM I thought would go higher. But.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I was talking about. Our perimeter is not defined, and I think that having that second factor of auth is quite important.
Okay, and then your last pick?
I will go next-gen firewall. I'm a network guy.
Yeah.
Ah, you animal.
You took my email. You took email.
Yeah, okay. All right, fair enough. We'll go with that. I think I'm going to go with the SIM.
Okay, the SIM.
Yeah.
All right. And again, that's one I thought would go a little earlier, but.
I'm all about visibility when stuff is going on. It's always very important to see that something's happening.
And I guess that's another question. I mean, is SIM something that, again, a 100 to 5 person ballpark company, are they looking at that, or is it really just like the Fortune 500s that?
We've been talking about SIM for how long, but I don't think there's many organizations that either have it deployed or deployed well. And it's so much information that I think you just get numb to it. As we were talking about yesterday, I don't want to call out who it was, but a large company, a retail company that was compromised a couple years back, they actually had a SIM deployed and all of the information was coming in, but you have to do something with that information. And the problem with the SIM is that a lot of times it's post. So it's good from a forensics perspective, but not from as much protection.
Well, I can say, like, the organization I was at before here, we were about 250 users or so, and one of the first things I did when I came in is get a SIM in place just to get that central reporting. And there's a lot of them out there that don't have to be. I mean, there's some really big ones that require an entire team to run, right? Let's be honest about that. But there's a lot of them out there that really do a good job of fairly easily being able to deploy and get in there, even freeware ones, or open source ones that do a pretty good job. So I'll stick with my choice.
All right, and Stacy, your last pick.
I'm going to go with password standards.
All right.
Okay.
All right, it's good to have. All right, so that completes the draft for today. Can we get the board up there so we can take a look? All right, how are you guys feeling about your teams? Who thinks they got the best team?
Solid.
Yeah, I'm strong.
Solid, even with no backup.
No backup.
Pretty good.
That's how much faith I have.
All right, so of course, throwing a little curveball here in fantasy baseball tradition. What would fantasy baseball / security / ransomware preparedness be without some trades? So we are going to be doing some trades.
Oh, that's right.
I've got some things to offer you guys, and you guys can offer me one or more of whatever you guys have, see if there's any interest in it. The first one is, we know we weren't going to do security awareness training for an entire company, but I'm going to offer you guys security awareness training for your executives.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
What will you give
I'll
up?
definitely. I got to see the list here.
We got a full screen of the list again.
Let's see. I'll give up the SIM.
Give up the SIM.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. Anyone else want to make an offer, or are you guys going to let Eric have
No,
it?
I kind of.
You're comfortable?
No. I
you
think
wanna
I
make
want
a
to swoop
bid?
in if I can here. So you know what? I would give up the. Can I see the list again there real quick?
Yeah.
The on-prem backup appliance.
Really?
Because he does have 2 backups.
Yeah.
That's true.
And
Okay.
password standards.
Well, you'd give up both for the executive. Yes?
No, I can't do that.
But the offer is on-premises backup or SIM.
Yeah.
All right, I will accept Stacy's offer. Stacy's going to accept. Aaron, can you swap out Stacy's on-premises backup appliance for executive security awareness? Thank you. Another trade I have to offer: backup testing, with of course the implication being that if you don't trade for this, you are not doing any backup testing.
But,
Dean obviously has no need for this.
Yeah.
You know, I'll do the same thing. SIM for that.
SIM for that. Stacy?
well, it's along the same kind of thing. So second chance tool.
Okay.
For
Second
that.
chance tool or the SIM. I think I will take Eric's offer on that. Right. Do we have plates for the other ones? Executive security awareness training? We do not. Okay. That's all right. Okay. So yes, we're going to move the SIM and we're going to replace it with backup testing. So just imagine it, everybody. And then the last trade I have to offer: Bitcoin for paying the ransom. Anyone want to trade for that? No offers. Nothing.
Nah, I'm going to hit these guys. They don't even have a firewall sitting there, so I'm going to hit these guys straight from the internet.
Okay, all right. So I think we have time to go through one scenario. And so imagine a hypothetical situation, purely hypothetical, where you are the IT director for a large metropolitan area. This metropolitan area is in the South. It is known for Chick-fil-A and known for having a football team that happened to choke in the Super Bowl after being down 28-3. It is also known as being the birthplace of Lil Jon and the East Side Boys.
It's not very specific.
Not very specific. It's just a made-up company entity, okay. And someone is going to attempt to try to get in through a public-facing VPN into some of your city's operations and infect the ransomware that way by utilizing tunneling in through the VPN in order to install ransomware on your city's machines in order to take them for ransom. Ergo, taking your entire city hostage. Stacy, how do you feel like your solution? Well, how would you approach that? How do you feel like you would stand up? And again, don't forget that you have executive security awareness training in addition to DRAS, second chance tool, and password standards.
And they're kind of avoiding that that piece of it, right? Because they're VPNing in. But then again, you know, password standards are going to help with that. Second chance tools, unfortunately, we're not talking about a link being clicked on, but the end all, disaster recovery as a service, you know, so you do always have that to fall back on. So
and would disaster recovery, so I mean, we're talking about Atlanta, if you guys don't know. They got undertaken by a ransomware attack, and some of the services that they had rendered non-functional have been including things like the county jail and being able to process inmates. Are these and things like utilities, are these types of things, have you worked with companies like that to be able to set up a disaster recovery as a service?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's different levels of that disaster recovery, obviously, that they have in place as well. But yeah.
All right. So even though you did test the backup, or did you get an executive? I think those are swapped.
No, those are swapped.
Yeah.
I would, you know, I'll take it. But, yeah.
So that is the only question: is you were not able to test this backup, so we are just flying by the seat of our pants, hoping that DRAS is going to come through okay. But we're overall feeling okay.
That should be part of DRAS. Automatically, right?
All right, Eric, how are you feeling about yours?
You know, not great, but honestly, I mean, the backup is definitely the most important piece because they're coming in through VPN. The email pieces, although it happens more often with that, are not going to really come into play here, right? However, the cloud backup and the fact that it's been tested would probably help us not be offline for a week or so, kind of like the well, the cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah.
I mean, Atlanta's been down for a long time.
Yeah.
And you can only attribute that to the fact that maybe their backups were not great, their procedures weren't in place, and maybe they weren't testing things. So I think that from that standpoint, the cloud backup and the backup testing are going to help me quite a bit, being able to restore and be able to restore quickly.
Okay. Dean, how are you feeling?
I have to say I look fabulous. I got the multi-factor authentication here,
so they wouldn't be able to log in.
We're not going to be, you know, a lot harder to penetrate that. Sitting on a VPN, sitting on the next-gen firewall here, that is all, you know, because we've done our audit, is all configured properly. Does get through that. We've got the endpoints protected with some really solid back-end threat intelligence.
All right. Very cool. Well, there you have it. For this particular case, it looks like all three of us, you know, either having stuff on the front end. Again, we would have liked to have security awareness training for our entire organizations, but absent that, it seems like we're all in pretty good shape, more or less. I think Stacy, you know, having that backup but not having it tested is maybe among the most, but we'll see. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for playing along with Fantasy Ransomware Preparedness Draft. I understand we got a ton of questions coming in from the audience, so let's kick it on over to Erin to find out what folks want to know. Erin, take it away.
Chat is buzzing, so we're going to get right to it. All right, our first question is from Jonathan9739. Thanks for submitting. We all know that CryptoLocker, WannaCry, and Petya. What are some of the upcoming ransomware variants to prepare for?
What's the next big thing?
I think pretty much anything tied to ransomware as a service, anything RAS-based. I mean, we see Saturn out there. We're seeing you know, Cerber strains that are RAS. Some of these traditional strains are going to be RAS-based as well and focused on that. You know, the ransomware as a service model is a very interesting model, where essentially the developers are stepping back. They're no longer doing these attacks, and they're able to leverage people that may not be great technically, but they do have a lot of knowledge with scamming people and getting people to do things they probably shouldn't, right? And I think that just turning all these other threads or these other strains into ransomware as a service strains is definitely going to be something that's prevalent there.
Yeah, and one of them that we were kind of laughing about yesterday, although it's not funny, is popcorn time, which is, you know, I haven't seen it out in the wild too much, but what it is essentially, if you hadn't heard about it, is say you get hit with popcorn time, if you go and share it with your friends, if two people go and pay, then you're going to get your data back. So it's kind of a, you know,
it's like The Ring. You have to make your friends watch the videotape.
Yeah. And like I was talking about earlier, it's morphing, and they're getting a lot more intelligence into where they are. So rather than just, you know, treating it like a home user or just, you know, company X, now they're sitting in there and they can find out what company is this, how much can, you know, would they be willing to pay, how sensitive is this data, and or, you know, like I was talking about, you know, maybe getting some compromising data off those machines that they can use also
The
against you.
exfiltration piece.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Let's get another question, Aaron.
All right, our next question comes from Tahin, T-A-H-I-N, Tahin. What's a good strategy to use to get management on board for spending more on a multi-layered approach versus only backups?
I think we can go across the board. Stacy, what advice to get people to cough up money for better backups?
Well, it comes back to risk assessments, right? What you know, if we do get hit, you know, how's that going to affect us, right? What compliances are in place? You think everybody understands that, but unfortunately, a lot of times people don't really understand what's at risk. So it's laying that piece out to them, I think, is the important side of it.
And so if a company is starting with nothing, right? You're just
Right.
starting up and you want the simplest, most cost-effective protection possible. I mean, is that cloud backup? Is it DRAS? I mean, is it both? Is it, you know, what would you say is kind of the entry level to like quality backup?
Well, it definitely can be cloud
Yeah.
backup. Definitely, that's one of the easiest ones to do that. But the other side of that's cloud restore, right? So how long is that going to take, and does that make sense? And then you can tack on to that disaster recovery as a service up in the cloud. But often it's just deploying an appliance in the environment and getting that first piece in there as well, right? So now that trumps, you know, the longer term restores coming from the cloud. Or, you know, then you start moving into maybe a hybrid situation where you're doing local and cloud and you're following maybe 3-2-1 rules, right? Where you have multiple sets of your data in multiple locations and, you know, some of the data is going to be offline as well. So.
Okay. And Eric, advice for investment in security awareness training?
Yeah, I think the first thing you do is get them all a subscription to Forbes, Entrepreneur, and any of those magazines, because anymore, every day when you see these things, it's like in their face. It's another breach, it's another this. The impact is hitting the C-level. It's hitting up in that C-suite. The other thing we have to do, though, as security professionals to kind of tag along with that is be able to speak to them in their language, which a lot of times is ROI. They're making decisions for funding based on a lot of different things, from marketing to, you know, the operations piece to research and development, and it all comes back to money and what's the return on that. We need to be able to speak to that, and we need to be able to lay out, you know, here's the average cost of a breach per record. We have this many records, et cetera, et cetera. This is what our spend would be, and this is what we estimate our return on investment would be. And if we can speak that language, we can build a much better picture for the executives to be able to understand what they're approving or not.
Dean, anything from you?
Yeah, so I used to work at a large convenience retailer, and we. What happens a lot of times is I think you get in the battle in an organization of security versus convenience, and they don't go hand in hand. A lot of times when you put things in, it's going to, you know, cause a little bit of rub, and a lot of times that's not going to flip. The budget's not going to be there until someone gets compromised. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of times that, and I'm not saying go get compromised, but it's amazing when something does happen. The FBI comes in and takes some servers away, how that flips. just not that happens, but that totally flips to where, you know, the pockets open up, and they also, you know, say, okay, if it's going to be inconvenient, so be it. Then we've got to go for it. So. And you know, everything, it's so prevalent in the news now. I think it's got to be a lot easier than it used to be.
Okay.
Cool. And I think there's 3 factors, whether or not we're talking security, backup, really anything: speed, convenience, and cost. And it used to be you could only have 2 of the 3, right? So you had to give up 1, right? So if you wanted something to be fast and you wanted it to be cheap, you were probably giving up, you know, convenience or something like that as well. So, but now you know that there's those 3. So now you know, okay, these are the 2 that they're happy with. Now let's focus on their objections to the other one, so that we can, you know, intelligently kind of have that discussion and the correct discussion with those C-level people to kind of explain, here's why it's going to be, you know, more of an impact and things like that.
For sure. Aaron, can we get another question, please?
Yes, this comes from Andy Shannon. Last year, I heard mobile device infections would soon become the new entry point for ransomware. Is that still coming? Because I haven't heard of any mobile-based ransomware infections yet.
I did notice that mobile protection went undrafted in our draft. Was that, what are your guys' thoughts on this?
So I'll start. A lot of what we're seeing is on the Android space. You know, I use an iPhone. Apple drives me nuts a lot of cases, and the things that they do. I can't charge my phone and listen to something at the same time now. But
you gotta get AirPods.
We do have for anyone go out to Google Play and download. We do have a free client for those. But we're seeing more and more, and there used to be the name's not coming to me, but there's been some ransomware where basically what it did was took over your phone and bounced it and overlaid to where you weren't able to use it. So it wasn't encrypting the data. It was a different type of ransomware that was basically making the device unusable until you paid the ransom. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick in that, but again, it's all in the Android space just because of the inherent nature of the OS with Apple.
You know, I think I saw, one of the stats I saw was in 2016, there were about 153,000 devices affected by mobile ransomware. That's not a lot given the sheer volume of mobile devices that are out there, but we have definitely seen some POCs. There was Leaker Locker last year, which was it was a download from the Google Play Store, and it basically did an overlay, and what it said was, if you don't pay us $50 in 72 hours, we're going to send all of this data, your text messages, your emails, all this stuff out. But really, I haven't seen it that much in the wild yet. I'm surprised by that a little bit more. You know, Leaker Locker was done by the person installing it actually giving it all of the permissions that it needed. So it wasn't like it had to go in and elevate permissions or need root access. It just gave you the laundry list of, you know, you're installing a flashlight. I need your GPS and your friends list and, you know, access to all of your SMS messages, and people are going, oh yeah, that's fine, you know, one of those sorts of things. But I do expect that they're going to keep trying, and I think once they get a foothold in something that works in that pretty significantly, I think the game is really going to be on.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get some more questions.
Okay, this next one is from Kevin Ragubier. For new and emerging ransomware threat where no patch is yet available, is it enough for entities rely on their security tools and solutions to find a way to break the kill chain?
So, yeah, I was waiting to see if anyone else. I don't want to jump in every time.
And I was like, I don't know why you guys are looking at me.
Yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of it comes down to what your endpoint itself is doing. Is it, you know, we talk a lot about 0 days, and if you watch a movie, they're always like, oh, someone's getting in with a new 0 day, blah, blah, blah. You hear about 0 day all the time. But in a lot of cases, it's not what is reality in our space. But with having that machine learning and knowing a lot more about what that's actually doing, it doesn't have to be that signature base where it's a known entity, but that machine learning piece does so much more of an understanding of what it does to stop that.
And I think the other side of this is when those do come through, having that backup that you can restore from.
For sure.
And we've had customers that, you know, they've been hit overnight or something like that, and they come in and they're able to restore systems back from, you know, 15 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago. And in a number of, you know, in some cases minutes, but usually, you know, a number of a few hours or something, restored an unbelievable amount of servers and got things back up and running. And, you know, I hate to say this because it's always tempting fate, but you know they're able to kind of thumb their nose at the you know the people that were you know hitting them with ransomware and say, no, I'm not going to pay you.
For sure.
Right.
You know, I worked in the medical space for a while, and one of the things that you see out there sometimes is you have this wonderful MRI machine that does great imaging, and it's being run by like a Windows XP machine, and the company that made it has been acquired 17 times in the last 6 months because this is a medical space and things like this happen all the time. There's no chance you're going to be able to patch that machine, but you can't throw it out because it does great imaging, right? So what do you do in those cases? And I think it's important that we as professionals, sysadmins and security folks look at this when we can't apply a patch. We do need to take that next step though and say, what can we do? Can we isolate this machine? Can we, you know, in the case of like NHS, can we shut off SMBV1? Can we limit it to only a couple of machines? We just need to take that extra step and think about what mitigations are there that are available to me in this sort of a threat.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with customers and done like a DMZ with that, whether they put a little firewall off it or, you know, VLAN tag it all the way up and really just quarantine that thing down to where it can only talk over the necessary ports.
Exactly.
All right. Erin, can we get one more question, please?
Yes, this last question comes from Lugnuts. We are taking snapshots of our data files, Exchange, and SQL every hour with our backup solution. How often are other businesses backing up their data?
Did you say snapshots or Snapchats?
I heard Snapchat.
Yeah,
Definitely a Snapchat.
do you guys recommend Snapchat as a
Do you
backup
guys
solution?
Snapchat
Yeah, absolutely.
every
Yeah.
hour?
Only if you do the duck lips, though.
And the filter, yeah.
Yeah, duck lips and filter.
But yeah, no, snapshots, how often? Can you repeat the question?
We are taking snapshots of our data files, Exchange, and SQL every hour with our backup strat solution. How often are other businesses backing up their data?
So I'm going to kind of answer this a little bit different, okay? And the way I'm going to answer it is, I spoke earlier about, understanding cost, impact, and then security, I think it was. But really what you need to do is look to see what you need to do. Don't worry about what other companies are doing. So instead, take a look and say, okay, hourly, is that, for my Exchange data, if I were to lose that in an hour's worth of Exchange data, what's the personal impact from a company perspective, not a person, but that company's impact? What is their impact going to be, right? Don't worry about what other people are doing. You always, and one thing that I always tell new customers or customers I'm talking to is a lot of the people I'm speaking to are doing daily backups. So the first thing I suggest is, why don't we do a backup every 12 hours instead of every day? And then let's see how that affects performance, because there's a lot of different things to it. And then once that goes and we're happy with that, now let's go to 6 hours and let's see how that impacts. And what you'll see is, as you run these backups and you're dealing with less and less data, a lot of times your impact on the machines actually goes down. So you're performing faster backups, you're getting a much better RPO, and you can start to dial that in. So 6 hours, 3 hours, and then hour and a half, hour, to where, now you're getting down to true level of really tight DR levels, and RPO levels, right? So then you kind of see, what's my impact, what's my business impact, and go from there.
So just try to get it keep pushing it until it's as good as you can get it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
This definitely would be my recommendation.
All right, very cool, guys. Well, thanks again for everyone. It is now time to it's time to start to wrap up. So I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to share any final thoughts or advice that you might have. Stacy, we'll start with you. For folks that are out there wanting to figure out whether their current backup solution is going to be able to protect them adequately from ransomware, what advice do you have for them?
Absolutely test your backups. Do take a look at your business. It kind of echoes what I just said, but go through what's your risk. You're going to have training in place. You're going to have products in place, but then as a last resort, what is the true risk? And then let's make sure that we get a product that fits that.
Okay.
Right.
Eric, folks want better security awareness in their organization. What advice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, take it seriously. The people part is something that needs to be a part of your security program as a whole. One of the layers, a very important layer among others. There is no solution, again. Nothing's 100%. But don't forget your people in that. Don't underestimate how much your people can make the difference in your organization through reporting to you, spotting these things, stopping the threats when they come into the inbox, all of those things. People so often underestimate the user side of that. So we need to stop doing that.
All right. And Dean, for folks who want to know what security technology investments they should be making, what advice?
So just to echo what Eric's saying, the users are your weakest link. I mean, they're the ones that are clicking on these emails. We're seeing that over 70% of all the ransomware that's getting in is coming in through email. So I mean, that comes down to the users that are clicking on things. So it comes down to layers. And don't forget to look at one part of your network. Almost think like a hacker. Even start to do some things like a hacker. Go and grab some of the pen testing tools that you can get, like Kali Linux. Or whether you look at some ethical hacking stuff, because that really kind of puts you more in the mindset of what are they doing, what facet are they going to look to try and come into my network. But again, don't forget about your mobile devices that are now part of your network, and that network and segmentation, and of course the endpoint. That is That's a major component, is protecting that endpoint.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. It's now time to announce the winner of our prizes. So we're going to kick it back over to Erin one last time to find out who's walking away with some cool prizes. Erin, take it away.
It's time for the prizes. All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in chat. Let's get these out to you guys. Prize time. All right. The winners for our 3 $25 Amazon gift cards are Tahin, Andy, Shannon, and Lugnuts. Congrats to you guys. And now, yes, thank you, for our grand prize. Can I get a drum roll from everyone? All right, for the Omen X 35-inch Ultra WQHD curved gaming monitor, the winner is Techie for Life. Techie number 4 Life. Congratulations, guys. If I read your username, please email us at ontheair@spiceworks.com to get in touch with us. We can get you your prize. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I had some big shoes to fill. Chelsea's awesome, and I'm glad I was here to step in. And this has been great. I hope I see you guys soon. And thanks so much, Justin. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Erin, and congrats guys to all those who are walking away with some prizes. Again, make sure to email us at ontheair@spiceworks.com if you want a prize, and let us know where you want those prizes shipped. Want to thank our panelists again, Stacy, Eric, and Dean, as well as our sponsors for today, Arcserve, KnowBe4, and Sophos. Had a really great time. I definitely think that we should do this again. Hopefully we're able to put this together. I thought it was a lot of fun. We'll be back here next week. We're going to be talking all about screaming into the VoIP. So make sure to check out a podcast featuring Jimmy T. That should be dropping soon. It's also, again, available in your mobile app. So in addition to Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play, you can also listen to our podcasts in the Spiceworks mobile app. So make sure to get that downloaded. Of course, for more information about that episode and all things on the air, you can follow us in the community at community.spiceworks.com/ontheair. But until next time, guys, stay safe, keep it spicy, don't get infected with ransomware, and we'll see you guys back here next time. Bye, guys.